Student ICE protests were not organized by students, and Becky Pringle has been lying to her members, and it needs to stop. Keep watching to learn more, and like and subscribe to the new Frontline podcast to never miss an episode. If you still believe that the anti-ICE protests that are happening around the country are solely because of high schoolers organizing and rallying together, my friend, I say this as kindly as I can, but you are severely mistaken. Now, don't hear what I'm not saying. High schoolers are our future and they are capable of a great many amazing things. However, they can be capable of a great many things and also are able to be influenced and misled when their youthful naivete becomes profitable for someone or something to co-op, which is what is happening right now. The Teacher Freedom Alliance CEO Ryan Walters talked about this in a recent op-ed of his for Fox News, where he wrote, "It's not students organizing ICE walkouts. Here's who's really behind the nationwide protests." If one thing is clear, it should be children do not design national protest strategies, coordinate messaging across states, or time walkouts for political effect. Adults do. To be specific, what is being represented as an organic grassroots movement is being orchestrated by adults who run the same teacher unions and activist networks that have blurred and now erased the lines between education and political warfare. This distinction matters because when schools across the country become staging grounds for political demonstrations, students aren't being empowered to speak their minds. Ryan makes such an important distinction here that I think is really important, that usually, yes, protests or walkouts that happen in high school do have a more grassroots behavior to them because there is this air of youthful authenticity, right? You can tell when something is organized by kids, high schoolers, versus when it's organized by very seasoned professionals and adults. But the attitudes surrounding these ICE protests are highly organized, laser-focused, intense messaging that produces very large turnouts that simply are just larger than would normally happen if the organization had truly been solely by high school students. Again, don't hear what I'm not saying. I'm not saying that students aren't capable of organizing. They very much are. But when they do organize walkouts and protests, it doesn't look like this. It just doesn't. It does not look like this. What is happening is not authentic. It is a highly political messaging that is using, again, that youthful naivete to send a political message and to encourage students to rage against the machine and put themselves in harm's way and encourage students to not spend time in the classroom is absolutely despicable and goes directly against what a union about teachers and education should be promoting. I don't think there is any world that exists where any sort of social justice issue can be rightfully considered more important than a student's baseline education, and to promote messaging that instills in young people this belief that their education is optional or worse, less important than a passing fad of perceived injustice, that is wicked. We have to keep asking ourselves the question, who benefits from this? Who benefits from this? A union leader will look me dead in the eyes and tell me that they want to make America a better place and do what's best for students, and then promote messaging that keeps kids out of classrooms and instills narratives of hate and injustice and violence in our kids. Who benefits from this? I would love an honest answer to that question. Who benefits from this? Because they're not doing what's best for America. That's for damn sure. Ryan also makes this point in his op-ed too. He says, the student walkouts against ICE follow the exact same playbook unions used during Trump's first term with COVID-19. Disrupt, destabilize, and weaponize public institutions against our government. Promoting walkouts, whether it's over COVID, ICE, Venezuela, or whatever political conflict comes next, sends a message that skipping school is not only acceptable, it is virtuous as long as your politics are correct. And I hate to sound like a broken record. I'm pretty sure I've said that before, but teacher unions are proving beyond a reasonable doubt that their intentions are rotten. And I make these same points and I sound like a broken record because these points always are true. I will stop making them. I will stop pointing these things out the moment they cease to be true. However, the odds of that happening, of unions suddenly turning over a completely new leaf and changing all of their corrupt ways, is slim. So, as much as I would like to say that union or worker institutions like unions are good and that we can trust them and that they're worthy of your trust, that is not true. That has not been true for a very long time. They're not worthy of your trust. They're not worthy of you saying, yes, a union by all intents and purposes is a good thing and can do good for their members. That is no longer true. Teacher union leaders lie. They lie straight to your face. They say they exist to put a voice to the members and use their collective power to do good for their membership. But what they do far more often is focus on hating American institutions, calling for incessant radical change that is usually pretty violent, donating to political action committees that want to destroy democracy and instill socialism and communism instead. And they misuse member funds every damn day. And they lie to your face every day that they do so. Rusty Brown, our director of special projects and one of my favorite people in the office, spends much of his time looking at this across the country, how unions lie to their members and how we as the Freedom Foundation can call it out. He was recently interviewed in a Center Square article titled "Taxpayer-Backed Unions Receive $390 Million in Dues." Rusty talked about a very familiar topic to us regarding how unions function like cartels and how they're contributing to declining academic standards since they prioritize political action spending, inflated leader paychecks, and lobbying over real member needs. In the Center Square article, the author also talked about how the NEA reported nearly 3 million members from September 2024 through August of 2025 and received $454 million in total during that fiscal year. Then, of that amount, about $390 million came from dues and agency fees. So let's do the math. 390 of 454 is 86%. So a full 86%, that's almost 90% of NEA's money in 2024 through 2025 came from member dues that were deductions from taxpayer-funded salaries. That is absurd that the taxpayer is funding the NEA's garbage up to 86%. Ridiculous. The article then goes on and identifies some more financial statistics, which were interesting. NEA President Becky Pringle received over $500,000 in that time for her salary, and since becoming president in 2021, her salary has increased by more than $80,000. Vice President Princess Moss received total compensation of $400,000, and Secretary Treasurer Noel Candelaria received also over $400,000 in salary during that time. That is a crazy amount of money. This should piss you off. This should absolutely piss you off. Becky Pringle and her goonies have no right to demand a $500,000 paycheck when all they do is make their members' lives harder. How do they make their lives harder? What a great question. Thank you so much for asking. Let's go back to Exhibit 1, the ICE protests. They send out messaging encouraging students to go out and spend class time protesting ICE on the street instead of being in class. That's not making members' lives easier. That's not making a teacher's job easier. That's not prioritizing education or time in the classroom. That's making people's lives harder. And Becky Pringle gets paid over $500,000 to do so. That's some BS if I've ever heard so. And continuing in the outrage, I found a stat that said in the 2023 through 2024 school year, the average starting teacher salary was $47,000. The average top teacher salary was $84,000. So if you're a teacher in the middle, say making $60,000 a year doing the actual daily job of teaching, there is not a world that exists where your union boss leader has a right to be paid nearly 9 times more than you, where her job is not as difficult. It's not actually working with students every day, but in fact, her job is to run her mouth on the internet and make your life harder. Not even to mention that the ROI on $200 of annual dues is maybe $15, so you don't know where most of your money is going anyway. This is why we say defund the teachers' unions, because the money they get handed in nearly unlimited amounts stems from taxpayer-funded salaries, and that disenfranchises average Americans who need every last cent, who need to budget, who need an extra $200. $200 could pay for my groceries for a month, maybe like a month and a half. That's a lot of money. And Becky Pringle, she just doesn't relate to that anymore. She is so rich. She gets paid $500,000. That $200 is chump change to her. She doesn't give a rat's about how much $200 means to you or me. She's not like us. She has made the decision day in and day out to choose herself and her paycheck over the needs of her members and the job that her union should be doing. All right, we're still staying on the NEA topic, but I want to switch gears for a second here. I promise you're going to want to see this one for yourself. Something happened in Florida recently that has been absolutely lighting up the internet, and for very good reason. Everything we've been talking about, the ideology, the agenda, the indoctrination, the priorities that have nothing to do with students, it just played out fantastically in real time on camera in Florida. Take a look for yourself.
When Florida students are confronted with videos of ICE raids, of families being torn apart, and of Americans being murdered for using their constitutional rights, they respond. They organize. They speak out. And they do what American students have always done in moments of injustice. They stand together and demand safety for their peers, their families, and themselves. And that response, while framed by some politicians as radical, is rather reasonable. It's rational. And in a moment like this, it is required.
When this started going viral, it absolutely cracks me up that the NEA and the FEA knew they screwed up, and so they've been really trying to distance themselves from the comments that were made, even though this was all said under the lens of the union, because it was a representative of the union with the union branding and everything that was there saying this sort of stuff. And while really it does not come as a surprise, it is certainly deserving of all the shame that the internet decides to heap upon it, and it is glorious seeing this video get absolutely ratioed on X. So much so that our CEO, Aaron With, and Florida Commissioner of Education, Anastasios Kamoutsas, decided to go in together on an op-ed about this sort of stuff that was just posted in Real Clear Education last week. I will link the full thing in the YouTube description below for anyone who wants to read it. Fantastic op-ed, of course. What we need to note here is that this solidifies the union pattern on a very clear national stage, because the NEA, which is the FEA's parent organization, has already endorsed student-led protests like this in written materials and in various online events, both happening this year and in previous years past. No longer can anyone deny that the teachers' unions push an ideology, because we have literal video evidence of them getting on stage and saying this stuff in the face of one of the most controversial federal events of the modern age. There is absolutely no room for denying this, because we actually have it on video now. We are seeing political activism take priority over education. We are seeing ideological agendas being pushed into classrooms, and union leadership is clearly more focused on the national political fights than the needs of teachers or students. This is entirely inappropriate and unacceptable. That hollow claim of working for members does not hold up anymore. Not when you have an actual union representative encouraging students, demanding students actually, to protest politics during precious school hours. At some point, you have to call it what it is, which is that these organizations are relentless political machines, and students and teachers and communities and families are the ones left paying the price. And nobody seems to be coming to hold them accountable except us, except Freedom Foundation. Lastly, I would like to say that I would hope that if you see this episode or a clip from this episode on the internet, and for whatever reason you disagree with the things that I'm saying, I implore you to please do the research yourself. There is a reason why I link all of the articles, all the research in the YouTube description. Heck, go read the NEA's financial statements to see the black and white funding dispersion. Look at all the communications that teachers unions themselves put up on social media. Go to X and look at pictures that teachers post of the bulletin boards in their schools that have all sorts of indoctrination, including partnering with Planned Parenthood and promoting Planned Parenthood to their high school students. This is not some grand conspiracy where I come here and I make baseless accusations and tell you to not look anywhere else because only I know what's really going on. No. That is what unions do. That is not what I do. I look at evidence that proves to me beyond a reasonable doubt that government teachers unions are up to no good and are lying to the public about it. I would really love to see some critical thinking happening up in the subreddit and the comments section of these videos, because if you do all the research, you look at the financial statements, you see what teachers are telling you, firsthand accounts, you will come to the same conclusion that I have, which is that teachers unions are no good and we have to defund them. These union leaders have not earned your blind trust. Just because they've been around for 60 years and have institutional history does not mean that they are infallible. In fact, I would say it proves the exact opposite. And then union leaders go on and they attack the federal government and the Trump administration for the same things that can be said about their own organizations. Why are we holding unions to a different standard than any other part of the government? Unions are federal organizations able to be corrupted and abused as much as any other part of the government. Becky Pringle is lying to you. All the government union leaders are lying to you. And we need to get a grip on this, expose it for what it is, and stop it before it gets worse. Thanks for watching the new Frontline podcast. Hit that subscribe or follow button to stay up to date on every episode we post, and drop a comment down below. Do you agree, or is there something we missed?